My name is Lesis Makulis. I'm the VP at Invest Lithuania, and I'll be host of today's panel discussion. Over the past few months, pandemic and introduced quarantine has definitely affected every business around the world. Today, we have a great opportunity to learn from GBS sector leaders on how the situation will change or has already changed the way most companies work on a daily basis. And today we have a very experienced panel with us. Arminta Saladžienė, VP for European Markets at Nasdaq and CEO of Nasdaq Vilnius Services. Giedrius Zekunskas, Head of End User Technology and Collaboration at Danske Bank. Marius Ivanauskas, Head of Telia Global Services Lithuania. Šarūnas Šuipis, VP Operations and Managing Director at Western Union, and our panel moderator and guest speaker, Elias van Harvarden, Principal of Location Perspectives, who has more than 30 years of experience in location advisory. First, we will start with a short overview of the current situation globally, which will be presented by Elias. Then we will have a panel discussion, and the last 15 minutes will be reserved for audience Q&A. So I want to encourage our audience members to be active and to submit your questions into Q&A tab that you can find at the bottom of your screen. Without further delay, I would like to pass the word to our guest speaker and panel moderator, Elias van Harvarden.
Thank you very much, Lesis. Thank you, dear friends. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen around the world. A real privilege to be here. So, what we're going to do in the next 10 minutes is we're going to try to explore the outlook for global business services beyond the lockdown. Now, a couple of housekeeping rules. First of all, I do not have all the answers. We'll be looking at themes emerging and implications emerging, and we'll focus just on a couple. It's my personal belief that in these big times of very fast change, each and every one of us has a piece of the puzzle. And I, for one, am very curious to look at the final picture emerging once the dust starts settling. So we need your cooperation in this. And please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Laura of Invest Lithuania is keen to get all your questions, and she's going to feed them back to us at the end of the session. So, Laura, if we could please go to the next slide. Thank you. There are many themes, and much has been written and said about them, and much will be written and said, but let's just focus on 4 of them. In the conversations I'm having with people throughout the Central European region, GBS leaders and service providers, number 1 theme is increased corporate focus on cost. Now, we all know that margins in the frontline businesses have gone down, and they've gone down drastically. Around 78% of the world's largest 5,000 corporations, Lesis and everybody else, has reported a downward correction of their earnings by end of May. And not just a small downward, on average 30%. Some industries were very badly hit. Others, think IT, think life sciences, less so. Some of you may have joined the PW COVID-19 CFO Pulse survey last night. It was an update. And actually, it showed that 86, so that's probably 9 out of 10 CFOs globally, think that they will be implementing cost reduction measures in the next 3 to 12 months. An astonishing 70% expects to either delay or cancel investments. So that's not good. But there's good news as well for us in the GBS community, because only 22% of CFOs actually think that they will reduce investment in digital transformation. Only 13 will reduce investments in customer experience initiatives. And that is exactly what our sector is all about. It also puts the CFOs at the forefront. Many of them have been reactive to change, but now with cost control, cost reduction on the top line of everybody's thought, they will need to come into a more forceful action mode. Again, I personally think good news, because many of our GBS centers are reporting to CFOs. For the centers themselves, I guess, and let's look at what the panel has to say, but it will be about doing more with less. A second trend that I really see emerging is there's a need to improve agile and flexibility. Now, we all know that the pandemic overtook us in terms of speed and in terms of scope. Our BCPs historically were just geared to keeping a couple of critical processes alive for a couple of days or a week. That didn't work now. Organizations had to quickly adjust to the fact that many, if not all, of their operations had been affected. And for GBS, that was a very big problem, because if already they faced their own lockdown challenges, they also saw instances where frontline businesses were pushing operations back to the centers. Somebody had to do it. Everybody was scrambling for resources. I think that the key lesson that organizations took is that they need to improve speed and elasticity, not just in their centers, not just in their front lines, but throughout the organization. So that is a second theme that I see coming forward. De-risking as the new mantra. I think that you could argue that businesses have become comfortably numb. Since the early 1990s, we saw a liberalization of trade regulations, of foreign direct investment, and companies could go all over the globe to locate there where it was most effective and efficient to produce. We all remember in our sector the growth of in-house centers and BPOs in countries like India and like the Philippines. We also saw that in frontline operations of manufacturing. If already, due to attrition trade wars, if due to geopolitical instability, some manufacturers started rethinking their supply lanes, rethinking from where they could shore and source stuff, that has come home to our business as well. It will be about de-risking going forward, our own supply lines, be it between centers or between centers and actually service providers. The big thing, the big new thing, the new old thing, I think. Work from home does work. Now, work from home has been very normal for a couple of industries. Think of the IT. Software people would not ask anything else but to have the possibility to work from home, more importantly, than working in the office. But for many corporations, working from home or remote work was just a way to help employees to stay with the company by improving a work-life balance. And many of us thought it wouldn't work. We thought that processes had to be conducted predominantly in office. Well, there are experiences, and many of the people on the panel can testify to that, that they were able to do remote work for processes they never thought possible. Employees love it. And so many people rightly say that working from home is like going to be the new normal. Let's talk about that a little bit later. So if these are four themes coming forward, let's not forget that some of these themes were existing in the global business centers already, and that they are added on top of the regular, very heavy workload of GBS leaders. Laura, could you take us to the next slide, please? So, what are the implications? I think, first of all, further race on talent. Now you might say, look, Elias, we've heard that 1,000 times, but I think this time it's a little bit different. Given the need for automation, given the need for remote work, given the need for speed and agile, there will be more emphasis on attracting people with digitally savvy skills. STEM talent already was hunted for, IT talent was hunted for. Now we've got an acceleration of automation. That is one way corporations are going to try to deal with the COVID-19 fallout. Actually, what I expect to see is a widening of the supply-demand mismatch for those skills. I also think that increased remote work, increased working from home will call for a different skill set. I think that it will accelerate the need for a GBS worker of the future, a GBS worker that takes ownership and authority over a process or over a part of a process. We are all familiar with the concept of global process owners in global business services. I think that the GBS worker of the future will be very much a mini process owner. Now, do we have that individual? I don't know. Do we need that individual? I would propose we do. A second implication ties into that. It ties into the need for agile, and it's about stepping up processes and personal and people management. Now, stepping up processes, I've often spoken to the fact that, much to my disappointment, there's a divide between them and us, them being frontline business, us being the GBS. I think what this global crisis and its scope throughout the business has shown us that we can no longer have that divide. It must be about one organization. It must be about ultimate customer experience. I think that companies need to walk their talk on that. Frontline can no longer blame the GBS and treat it like it was a BPO provider. And the GBS should integrate further into the frontline business. There must be a real end-to-end process mastery involving parties from all segments of the business. I think there's a challenge coming with that, and it's about people management, because many of the GBS centers, not all, but many, have organized their work based on standardization of work processes, very much like Henry Ford did when he organized his first car factories. I think that we need managers who will be able to supervise based on standardization of output, on standardization of skills. And I just don't know, and maybe the panel can answer that question, do we have these people out there and how do we get them up to speed very quickly? Another implication of it all is that we'll see multiple location service delivery models. They will be layered and they will be hybrid. Now, some of you in the audience and some of you here on the panel already have multiple sites, nothing new. It's very common for business process outsourcing service providers and for IT. We've got examples like SEB Bank in Lithuania, we've got Credit Suisse, we've got State Street, we've got Atlas Copco. Many already have dual centers. There will be more of that going forward. And it also means that they will be looking at additional cities. I think that we can see tier 3, tier 4 cities popping up, but is everybody equipped to make that location choice? A final element that I think is that we will see structural changes to the office landscape. Now the jury is out. Some surveys indeed, take Colliers one, predict that, what was it they said? I think that around 55% expect no change in office surface, 33 see a decrease. Several, by contrast, expects that offices will grow. But what do we do know? Social distancing is required. Companies do it, governments will enforce it. We'll be looking at different furniture, different layout. I mean, it must be cleaner, easier to clean an office space tomorrow than it was yesterday. And that brings me to one conclusion. If already many people said that the office of the future will be different from the one we knew yesterday, I think that COVID-19 and the pandemic, the social distancing will definitely make the office of the future a different one from the one we saw yesterday. So that in a nutshell about some trends and some implications. What I'd like to do now is to engage with the panel on a couple of topics. So indeed, on the panel, very honored, Marius from Telia, Araminta from Nasdaq, Sarunas, Western Union, Giridius from Danske Bank. Very much welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. Now, a couple of questions. I think what we've seen is that many businesses have reacted to the COVID response in very different ways. Working from home has been rolled out, I referred to that. But if I might ask you, well, let's start with Sarunas. If you would have a crystal ball and would look into the future of your operations 12 months after the COVID crisis has really disappeared, what does your floor space look like? What can you tell us about that? Give us a few pointers, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Elias, and good day to everyone. Thanks for having me here. 12 months, long or short period of time. Again, nobody knows how this will look like from today's standpoint. World is facing unprecedented times, both socially and economically, and that's, more or less impacting everyone. I would make a parallel of this situation with a storm. Everyone are in the middle of a storm, sitting in their boats and trying to escape of the storm. So the question here is how to escape the storm with a less challenges than you had in the past. Definitely that will be a different situation in the future in terms of how the office space will look like. But my point, which I would like to raise today, will be about more liberal flexibility of work and work arrangements for the employees of shared service centers and shared service centers of Lithuania. Definitely the change which we have seen is related to the fact that prior to COVID-19 situation, work from home was a benefit. What if work from office after COVID-19 situation will suddenly appear a benefit? Are we thinking about that? Are we ready for this? So these are type of questions which we are raising internally, and we're trying to answer and address down the road, so we are ready when we escape this storm. Alias?
I like that. Working from the office as a privilege. Wonderful. And I know some of you have wonderful offices. You're talking about employee benefits. And if I might quickly jump to Anamita, you guys did a COVID-19 survey across your company over the last couple of days. Does that give us any pointers as to what employees are looking for? And I mean, just imagine that Sarunas is right. The perk is not a parking. The perk is you can actually come to the office. What did the survey indeed at Nasdaq tell us?
Yeah, I agree actually that in the light of COVID-19, outbreak, which was pretty abrupt, and forced switch to work from home setup, that we will be rethinking the purpose of the office and going to the office. And I'm a believer that we will still, come to a realization, even the most skeptical ones, that we don't need to go to office to get access to production systems, or effectively do various tasks. But still, the office is the place where collective genius and tacit knowledge, is born through interactions and collaboration. And this is where the social norms are being established, which underpin organizational culture, which are really, really important. And I think that we will be, Nasdaq will be responding to those questions together with the insights that we will gather from the employees. So far, we carried out just one survey, COVID-19 response survey, where we wanted to hear from our people, most of all, how they feel. Do they find that the company really takes good care of their health and well-being? Do they have the equipment, and support that they need to work successfully from home? Do we continue to deliver to clients, during these really disruptive times, and also understanding the industry where we operate with, quadruple volumes, huge volatility, peak loads on our systems. And the feedback has been actually overwhelmingly positive from the employees, with a 95% company confidence rate, specifically, for example, coming from employees in Lithuania. With regard to work from home versus office, actually, I think Šarūnas might have a point here, because the feedback that I'm getting from the team in Lithuania is that many of us are really longing for comeback. Sure, we I think will be more open to enable choice and flexibility, but I think that working from home poses some unique also challenges that, Elias, you pointed to about personal and professional. And we will want to have the office, space to really come for creativity, for collaboration, for interactions.
Well, I wrote down like half a page on the stuff that you said. It's very inspirational. And before I start continuing asking the questions to the panel, everybody out there, don't forget about Laura. Don't forget about a Q&A session coming at the back end. That is your Q&A session. You've got the opportunity to interact with these wonderful 4 individuals. And I just like to encourage you once again to use that function, post your questions. So the office as a perk, and you mentioned a couple of things. Indeed, as a perk, you mentioned the office as the platform for sharing knowledge. And I put it earlier on in my introduction that I wasn't really sure whether we have the managers of the future and the employee mentality of the future, where we're talking about, it's almost like a surgeon and an anesthetist in a intensive care unit. They need to work together, and they don't have time to talk because there's somebody badly needing that operation right there, right now. So the worker of the future may be a different worker. And the office place can definitely help for training purposes and getting together and having that personal touch. We love to be alone in our work, and we love to be together to share the work and to learn from each other. I'd like to go to Giedrius. You guys have a humongous operation in Vilnius, a couple of thousand people when I was there last, and you were still building. Two things that's on my mind looking at that. How do you get that whole mass of people to start working from home, particularly considering the fact that you do more than simple transactional stuff? How did you install the right skills? How did you ramp up that management? Or are you telling me the big secret, which is that Danske Bank had this in the envelope in their inside pocket already? What is the situation in your company, Giedrius?
Well, I guess we've been built up as rather not a global service, but as one company together with our operations in Denmark and in India. So I think I especially don't use the global service type of a description anymore when we talk. We work as a one team. So I think that being in IT, we have a little bit of advantage, especially in IT, because once you work across the borders, once you work with a technology, once you work from home and you're technologically savvy, it's pretty easy to switch from office to home because everything remains the same. Of course, there are some small differences. Yes, of course, you have to get a VPN. Yes, you have to get another stuff. But then basically, there has been no big change. If I look from the change perspective, I think 98%, 99% of employees in Lithuania out of nearly 4,000 now work from home pretty successfully. So in Lithuania, so I think in Danske Bank about 20,000 people out of 25, I guess, are working from home on the daily basis. So if you look from the how does it go from in terms of the skill sets, as the teams are distributed already, for them is a norm to get on the morning meetings on video, morning meetings on audio, share the knowledge, which is like nothing changed so much. Do the individuals needs the social interaction? Of course we do. And I think Via is the place where the people start missing a little bit on office and physical interaction. But each drawback has a positive. So if you look into, and I think a lot of people know this type of headquarter management syndromes, where the decisions are taken somewhere and the people around these areas, they are more prone to access information around a cup of coffee. And then the people in other locations, which are more distant from that, they don't know exactly what is happening unless it is a management cascade or a team talk, right? But then the benefit of a COVID, if you look from that perspective, is what everybody sits in the same boat now. So the managers learn to communicate to their staff in the different countries as the same. Everybody has the same access to information. So, and this puts us, I guess, into very new but very good situation, actually.
Okay. And what I liked, and thank you for sharing that, is, and I've been looking for that. You saw it from my introduction. Examples of companies that indeed stop the them and us conversation, because I think it's really, it's poisonous. It's arsenic to what we're trying to achieve. Let's go over to my good friend Marius, Telia. Marius, you've been in this business for many years. You've used your skills to help forward the GBS community in Lithuania and beyond. I'd like to pick your brains on how you see the relationship with the exotic countries. Now, exotic, I mean, Costa Rica is doing relatively fine in this, but India, the Philippines have long been like partners, either because companies had their own back office there or because they had a service provider in those areas. There's a lot of talk about reshoring because of de-risking. What's your view on that? Is that something that is an actual conversational topic in your organization? And what is your view as an experienced GBS leader on the overall process? Will we be seeing reshoring, or is that just one of the many plates we're keeping up in the air as we're trying to wait for the dust to settle on this COVID-19 crisis? Marius.
Just before, thanks, Elias. Just before I move to your question, just a quick comment on what the guys have said, previously. What I think, in general, talking into the fact that we will need sooner or later to think about how do we come back to offices, how does work look like, and what does it mean to us. I think, at least in our case, what this situation brought is the quick iteration mindset in not only the functions that we're actually performing, but it's also brought that into sort of core organizational capability functions like HR, like learning and development, like people engagement, and so on and so forth. So I think it's, from that perspective, there is so much that we can bring back to those offices that we are very used to the fact that when we talk agile, we talk about IT. And we haven't been used to the fact that when we talk agile, we can talk HR, we can talk organizational development, we can talk about so many different things, And we noticed on ourselves that stuff that sometimes had taken us 2 years took us like 3 or 4 days to implement in this particular situation. But going back to your question, Elias, and putting that sort of Lithuania angle to it, I think we have, as a country, enormous opportunity. And I think that's inevitable. And you mentioned it very well in your slides at the very beginning, that companies, especially industries that are hit more by this situation, will and have started talking about nothing but cost. And how do we survive through this, right? Yeah. And one angle to it, of course, looking through all those cost lines and seeing that during the last 20 years, we have been relying so much on our colleagues, in Asia, such countries like India and Philippines and so on and so forth. I mean, India, 4 million people working in IT alone, right? Majority of those working in a similar setup like us. So for Lithuania perspective, I do see actually the 2 waves of interest in this whole scheme of things. So first wave, I think, is going to be driven by cost and purely cost. And some companies might want to risk more, or at least that we were actually hearing over the last few years, was that 20% of the cost difference wasn't really a question anymore. So if it's only 20%, it's not worth doing it. So I think those companies will come back to those plans. That's inevitable. And we will see that interest. And second thing, to your point, Elias, is going to be reshoring. And I think it's going to be more Western European countries. It's going to be more Nordic companies. It's going to be more companies from UK who have been hit by the fact that certain parts of operations in India could not perform as they're used to. So I think from Lithuania perspective, we will see that interest, and we will see that interest increase. But what I want to outline here is the role of the center manager in this particular situation.
Yeah.
Because in what we are seeing in Lithuania is that success leads to success, right? And it was a snowball effect for the last 10 or 12 years, where first the newcomers came, and then they were successful, and then more investors came, and so on and so forth. So I think for existing centers in Lithuania who have been successful, it's a very good opportunity to become even more successful, to do more complex things than we're used to. And to actually integrate ourselves more into that mothership, into the headquarter organization. And I liked your point, saying that, well, almost overnight, all teams were forced to become global teams. There's no HQ politics anymore, and it doesn't really matter where you are, whether it's UK, whether it's Denmark, Sweden, or Lithuania, right? There's no discussion that close proximity to business brings better output anymore. And that's the way it is at the moment, and we're all at the same proximity. And for me, this is actually a constitution that if there's the right setup, location doesn't really matter, and this will definitely impact how we are setting up that work in the future.
Marius, I always appreciate your viewpoint, but saying that location doesn't matter anymore is going to put me out of business. I'd like to come back, but not now, on the fact that you said what we used to take 3 years to do, we did it in 3 days. Because I think this is something that, I mean, have we gone to sleep? Have we become lazy? But before we go there, and I'd like to have Arminta's view on that, and Giedrius's as well, I'd like to go back to Serenas. Serenas, when we last met, there were a couple of other smart people on the call. I was just listening for once. You compared the situation of what you guys were achieving around the world. And you spoke about Vilnius, you spoke about the operations in Manila. To the point that Marius just launched, indeed, about reshoring, about being global, all of a sudden having to be global. What is it you can share about the Western Union experience, and particularly on the reshoring and working together as one, from Vilnius to Manila to the other centers worldwide? Sarunas.
Absolutely. Western Union is a global company, does business in 200 countries, territories, have offices in probably 60 different countries worldwide. So there is a true collaboration from the past, which became even much more important during COVID-19 situations. As you know, different countries took different approaches. Different countries implemented different quarantine regimes, and different countries went on different lockdown approaches. Globally, therefore, that kind of brought important need for everyone to basically drive the needs which are the most important for the end customer of the company. Being globally, we constantly think how to drive great customer experience, how to do what basically customers are asking and demanding, and from that need for us, it's also not that much important where, except maybe timing zone at particular cases where operations are based, if we can collaborate very well among each other, follow the sun principle, and other widely known. You mentioned Philippines, story there that in the central district of Manila, government took very harsh actions immediately, which basically result into the need to help colleagues from Philippines on a short period of time. And as per your slides, flexibility and agility was really important. Vilnius site was able, as well as other sites globally of Western Union company, to jump, to reskill a little bit workforce in order to address the needs of Western Union customers in APAC region until the colleagues in Philippines got back on track.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but so you very eloquently avoided the question on whether you see reshoring happening, but am I correct in stating that the experience of Western Union as a global company, like you said, indeed does not immediately trigger any panicky reactions about we're going to revise our footprint? Is the conclusion that indeed having a globally diversified service and integrated organization is, according to your personal view, the way to go forward?
Absolutely not. It wasn't a panic. It was more confidence that, capabilities from all around the globe can truly work productively and address the needs of the customers in various regions. That really paid off, because company COVID situation from business standpoint took a look from two different perspectives. One, what we can do very quickly to address changing business environment. Maybe retail business in some countries started to slow down a little bit, while digital business immediately started to grow. So how can we quickly rearrange ourselves in terms of creating those products which are needed for the customer, and also creating operational capabilities to address customer needs. So I would say confidence was important to quickly staff where it was the biggest need.
Like I'm talking to the audience for just a second, but there are many trends and there are many learnings to be taken. And thank you for everybody who's been speaking. And here particularly, I mean, Sharunas, you said it is about confidence. It is about confidence. And I haven't heard that in many conversations that I've been having. That hasn't popped up, that literally. Over to Aminta. Aminta, you guys with Nasdaq, you're relatively new in terms of setting a GBS function in Lithuania. You're doing very well. To the topic of needing to do in 3 days what normally you had planned for 3 years, to use Marius's example. You must have been overtaken. You had a relatively young GBS, and all of a sudden there's this huge storm that comes at us. What were the key learnings, and how did you manage indeed to do in 3 days what normally you had planned to do in 3 months or 3 years?
Thank you, Elias. Well, I would say, I think Gedrus made a comment here that we likewise, we don't really have a concept of GBS within Nasdaq. We are one company, and We have just bigger locations which cluster some maybe critical, business and IT operations, and also, development and testing capabilities. So from that perspective, I think we are both new and not. Then the second point is that, we are a technology company, and we, power not just the markets that we run in the US and in Europe, but we also power 70 more markets that actually rely on our technology. So we sell what we use, and we use what we sell, in terms of technology solutions. And it means that we are all the time really focused on resilience, on contingency, on BCPs, and these are not just slips of paper, but they are being regularly tried and tested. So therefore, I would say that these years of meticulous, capacity planning, risk management, again, BCP testing have really paid off, in the situation like this. So we already probably saw it coming. Therefore, we tested work from home capabilities for entire workforce globally, ahead the enforcement of quarantines in different locations. We had employees set up, asked what equipment they need, asked them to test all the accesses that they might need even once a month or once a quarter, because, just in case it's going to be longer than just a couple of weeks, which it turned out to be. And basically, we were really ready very, very, fast. And I think that also to your question and topic of, reshoring, I think during the times like this, the notion of total cost of ownership is manifested very, very well. It's not just about direct costs of running business as usual operations. It's about what Šarūnas was saying. It's all the agility, the infrastructure, everything comes into equation. And I think Lithuania generally, and our teams in Vilnius, have stood the test of resilience, adaptation, agility fantastically well. And that will only earn us additional trust, points. Also, I think we have to give sort of credit to our ICT infrastructure on the national level, which I believe we have been a bit taking for granted already, that's just hygiene. But again, in situations like this, and when it's a global phenomenon, where we can compare actually how countries and different locations have to deal with this situation, I think we have to give a lot of credit to the ICT infrastructure that Lithuania and the companies that operate here have managed to build, again, in years and years.
I think you, again, like everybody else on the panel, you're launching some excellent points. To the latter, ICT infrastructure, indeed, the fact that you can have people using Wi-Fi, and that power indeed is stable, and that the Wi-Fi connections work, indeed, these are critical factors to BCP plans going forward. And I remember being with BSF a couple of years back in Mumbai. Their managers had laptops, but it didn't help because the Wi-Fi system between the center and the suburb where they were living, it didn't work.
Yes, if I may jump here and just add to this, when many members of the family are working, doing online learning, streaming, and all the neighborhood is doing it. So it's an extreme of, capacity testing, actually. So it's not just having good Wi-Fi under normal circumstances.
No, I think the worst thing you and I need to deal with at this very moment is neighbors changing the fence, but that's just background noise. I'd like to go over to Greidius. Total cost of ownership. I can't help noticing that very often GBSs get judged on wage cost. But what I liked in what Adminta said, indeed, it's the total cost. I mean, why optimize wage costs in a center if you look at total cost of service delivery really to the final customer? You mentioned that you in Danske Bank there was no us and them. But what can you tell us about how your CFO is maybe asking different questions today than he or she had been asking before this whole thing started, in terms of what are your KPIs? Do you see any changes on guidance or requests you're getting from the headquarters?
Well, I think the crisis like this make people a little bit more pragmatic, and we are getting back to the things which we didn't touch or did not revisit in timely manner. So being pragmatic, what does it say? Hey, you need to build on what you are really good at. So if the young economy like Lithuania, 30 years old, age group between 25 and 35, this is like a prevailing age group, pretty good at engineering, maybe lacking a little bit of governance skills, and maybe product ownership. It's something which is still much stronger in the, let's call it, headquarter country. But then what are the strengths? We are able to build up the teams in 600 people in IT in 7 months. Possible? Yes, we did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you did.
So, and when you hit the crisis like this, you see, okay, why do people still need to be in office? A question. I need to print. Really, why you need to print? You should be paperless, right?
Yeah.
It's so simple. So we move next. I mean, what are the other deficiencies? Why the contact centers cannot work from home? Why the people are calling and there is no seamless handover towards to one channel to another channel? I think that opens up old questions, which were old problems, has been not solved before. And if you look about ability to build up from the junior engineers to the senior engineers, now everybody has a talent strategy, right? So we are in a very competitive but very young market. The strong sides of these companies and the young countries like this is ability to build and have a very balanced workforce in terms of junior, medium, and senior guys, right? Flat structure, very balanced. That gives you in normal speed. Okay, let's build up the robotics team to do these things. Maybe automate and make a business more digital. How long would it take? Okay, 3 months. If I need 50 guys in a robotics team, 3 months, we can build it up. So let's move next. I think what's about the cost Marius mentioned before. So I think the people are now even more pragmatic looking into this. What kind of cost savings and productivity we can gain from the different setups in different countries. This is not only the labor arbitrage, this is also effective, how effective we are. Let's look into the BCPs, again, very pragmatically. Okay, I think it's fine if we have a critical mass of people located somewhere. What happens if the country is in the full lockdown? What's about ability to transfer the people even in the lockdown between the countries? Do we have enough distribution of our skill sets across? And I think Lithuania, and especially when we talk about Northern Europe, fits perfectly into this. It's like absolutely perfect fit. We nearly all our BCPs are green now. So when we look into this. So I think the total cost of ownership, I think looking next, it's not only then, I understand the labor arbitrage still plays the thing. Of course, 10 or 20 difference, it was careless in the past. Now the people are really looking into that. I bet all companies in this call have a cost programs running now. All. So, and I think major of audience the same, but I think looking from pragmatic perspective, countries like this, I think emerge on the discussion very much on the top.
Marius, before we go to my last question to the panel, something that has been on my mind, and we've spoken about many topics already, but so we've been successful in BCP, and our organizations are doing good. Now, there's been a survey by SSON around 6 weeks ago, update due in the next couple of weeks. And they said that transitions were being halted. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, Robek of PwC, and he said, well, transitions require people to sit side by side and to identify what works and how the process should be harmonized and lifted up. Marius, with all your experience in Telia and before that, do you see that it will be particularly more difficult to transition stuff with a structural remote work as an organizational deployment model, or is that something we will conquer as well? Is that something we're going to do in 3-4 days, like you said earlier on?
Yeah, I think, it's when we think about possible versus impossible, many of us thought, and I'm one of those people who thought that colleague-facing or customer-facing functions could not be performed remotely successfully without damaging customer satisfaction. And I'm so happy that I was proven so wrong. Yes, it can work remotely. Yes, it can be successful. Yes, we can still work in a team, and we can adopt to those changing environment without any impact or very limited impact operationally to what we do. So I think that's more or less the same. When it comes to transition management, when it comes to other processes, and it's not only that, right? When it comes to business process automation as well. It goes to the point that, well, we're used to sit in a traditional environment. We are used to sit side by side when it comes to innovation, when it comes to automation, when it comes to getting rid of those processes. Yeah. But I think it's more about adoption, and it's more about thinking broadly, and it's more about not thinking in the same way of, top down, very traditionally. And as Gedri said, all companies become more pragmatic. And, I'm happy that Arminta touched that point where, very, very important who is behind those transitions and how much trust those people have, whether it's from headquarters, whether it's from functions, whether it's so on and so forth. And especially in these times, when it comes to when we have touched the point about talent, about agility, about the adaptation, people are after interesting job. And we, in Telia, what we keep on keep saying to people that we are actually behind that 50% of broadband in Lithuania that is being provided, when it comes to that critical ICT infrastructure and so on and so forth. So it's never been more important that we keep on doing what we're doing. And, when you give people trust, when you give people sort of limits of accountability, when you give people ability to take those decisions and build on that. And I think what's extremely important when you talk about transitions and process transitions is not executives, but it's also mid-level management that we haven't touched yet. Right. And this is the times I kept on saying on a few different forums that this is the stress test for mid-level management, right? Because not every single human being has the tools to navigate through what we're going through, right? To manage teams remotely. And imagine those first-line managers who have just became managers and are not sure how to run the team physically, and now all of a sudden everyone is remotely, right? So how do companies equip those managers with those tools to go through these times? And it's not only sort of top-down transition or country by country, but it's more about how do we run those teams when we come back to offices, partly or fully, right? How do we manage that 50-50 balance between those teams? So because it used to be a struggle, right? If you're the only one at home and all the team is in the office having a meeting and debating about something, I mean, try to interrupt that conversation from your living room that is happening around the table, it's impossible, right? And you're sort of distant. So how do we do that together? I mean, every single company has that challenge. And yes, to Idris's point, I think exactly the same, that every single company had cost challenge for a while and will have for a while, and that's a continuous mantra that it should be, right? So it's not only transitionalized, it's more about how do we equip people to build trust within those companies that we're running, right? And the easiest way to build trust is to do what you told you're going to do, right? Especially these times.
I think that we're coming to the end of our little private discussion, the panel discussion. Again, a lot of great insights, many inspiring points. I think that Myra summed it up well. We're all eternal optimists. You got to be when you're in the global business service business, I guess. My favorite question comes to you now, and it's what I call the Harry Potter question. And let me start with the lady. So it's the Hermione or Hermione question, really. I mean, if you would be given a magic wand like that, what would be the two things that you would change in Lithuania to make Lithuania a more resilient landing zone for, and let me call it global business services, even though at Nasdaq you don't call it that? What are the two things? You got 1 minute.
I think we've been hearing and referring kind of to resilience and agility a lot during our conversation as being the key word. So if I take that as the guiding post, I would mention the two things you asked for two. So let me limit it to two. My first focus area with the magic wand would be the public sector. We've just discussed that I think the GBS and ICT to a large degree have done fabulously well in this whole situation. So we need, as a country, to step up in terms of smart regulation, digital delivery of all public services, like end-to-end e-government, and quality of management skills, change management, crisis management, finance management, communication, you name it. So public sector, one, and then the other area would be education. So I think COVID was a forced kick for the entire educational system to start delivering teaching and learning experience in a new way.
Yeah.
Now it's the time for content. So to really build this digital technology analytical skill set, and also the agile, flexible mindset of our talent. So public sector and education.
And thank you for that. Don't mind me saying that, especially for the second element, it's not a magic wand, it's a magic baseball bat that you might be needing.
Yeah, true.
Sharunas, your turn. Let's be Harry Potter for a while. 2 big things you would change or improve.
If I had a magic stick, I would change weather. No, I'm joking. We continue to work on what Arminta said, education system, how to make it even better to what we have today, and also some of the migration policies, how to make them more liberal in the country-wise post-COVID situation.
Okay, that's good. Gidrius, your view.
Well, if I would have a magic stick, I would like to go to the future and borrow some senior experienced leaders and managers and bring them to nowadays. That would help a lot to most of our businesses and also the services the way we run it. It's a fantastic country, a lot of good engineers. What we need is more experienced managers and the leaders.
It's a perfect cocktail. Marius, what would be your 2 ingredients to the cocktail of the magic wand?
I think one of those things would be that we should stop thinking that problems that we have are unique to us and tap more about into what others have done successfully, and more even that those have done unsuccessfully, and learn from those pragmatic mistakes. That's one. But as my colleagues have touched more on the country level, I'd like actually to tap into our sector and take more pragmatical view, that what would make us more attractive or let's say attract more investments. So first of all, I would probably quadruple team in Invest Lithuania and those people who are behind attracting investments, because I have my own opinion that the input that you put is sort of proportional to the output. So the more people we would have working hard and working well within Invest Lithuania, team, I think that would make us more successful when it comes to attracting those investments. And very simple thing, I'm usually saying to my team that let's fix a few things and then let's move to 2 more that we can fix. So once it all resumes, when it comes to connectivity of all sort of the rest of the world, I'd like to get more flights to actually very simple task, more flights to more important airports as we have today.
It's wonderful, and thank you. Laura, you've been watching the questions coming in, and I see we have a number. Could you shoot some of us? I think I overran a little bit with the panel, but then again, sorry, I just like to hear and engage with them. Laura, what are the questions from the audience?
Yeah, thank you, Elias. So we have quite a lot of questions already in our Q&A box, so I'll just start right away. Waldas asks, if you were to lead the establishment of a brand new GBS center starting tomorrow, what would you do differently compared to what you would have done if you started 3 months ago or a year ago?
Okay, could I ask Marius to take the question? Because I think you've been trying the trick a couple of times already, and now maybe you finally learned an additional skill. Marius, what would you do different?
So first of all, I think what is important to any organization that is starting fresh at this very moment, to tap into the experiences, as they just previously said on the country level, but to actually go to the leaders that are in the industry and to learn from those mistakes that leaders did, as we all did, establishing those countries. But there are certain ingredients to whether it's this situation, whether it's any other situation when you're establishing a GBS. So first of all, is to embrace the fact that yes, you, as Gedrus Anderminta says, you are a part of the organization. Yes, you are a part of wider community, but you're still not at the country where headquarters are. So integration to global organization is super important. That's one. Another important sort of brick into the foundation is building trust. So how do you build trust in these times, especially? And it will be increasingly harder to do that, because building trust, you know, when it comes to your, whether it's building up functions, whether it's increasing complexity and so on and so forth, this is crucial at not only these times, but when you're just establishing. So how do you quickly sort of deliver what you were expected to deliver and deliver that even sort of more, you know, so that you would establish your presence? Because if you go to the point now, you know, to centers that were just established in Lithuania, I think it's a little bit interesting situation, because they might face challenges to the fact that, well, certain plans might change, some uncertainty might come if you were not able to prove yourself yet to the fact that why you were established in Lithuania. So I think tapping to leadership community, that's one, building up the trust as soon as possible, and delivering on what you need to deliver. That's those three things, you know, and find yourself a great team that will support you on the way. Easy.
And that's where Gedrus comes in with his magic wand. Go to the future and bring back some very good people.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Marius. Laura, another question.
Yeah, so in fact, we received quite a lot of questions focusing on location selection as a topic. So Milda, Lawrence, and Javila asks, will the main criteria for GBS location strategy change after the crisis, and how? And do you see Lithuania now being as a safe haven for outsourcing, given the strong infrastructure for homework versus, let's say, India and other countries?
One of the slides that I presented, and thank you, Milda, has the title, Keep Calm and Carry On. I don't think we're really seeing something radically new in the GBS community. We see accelerations of different criteria, business drivers, and we see different emphasis on certain elements, also in the locational front. I think that indeed resilience of local utilities, whether it's power, whether it's Wi-Fi access, will become increasingly more important. I think that what we've heard from the panel, and I'm just an advisor, so please listen to the four people who have been speaking. We're looking for certain talent skills. We're looking for educational capabilities. We're looking for ecosystems. And I think that going forward, that will receive even greater attention. I personally believe that indeed secondary locations throughout Central Europe. And why Central Europe? Because that is the faster growth region globally in terms of acceleration, not in volume, it's still India. We will see more tier 3, tier 4 locations popping up. Look what happened in Lithuania. We saw Kaunas coming up. All of a sudden now people are moving over to Klaipėda. We see that coming up. The problem is that for some countries, I'm not going to name anybody in particular, the situation regarding data availability is rather opaque, whether you talk about talent pools, infrastructures, and others. So I see a shifting. I don't see a radical change. I think that talent is going to be everything. And I think that those communities, city, region, national, that have built up an ecosystem where companies and institutional educations work hand in hand and not against each other, that will be a key element of winning destinations going forward for the sector. But let's try to get a question, not for me, but for the panel. Laura, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess this is the last question because we have only a couple of minutes left. So Vitanis asks, is this the best time ever to start looking for talent from outside Lithuania? 95% of employees in GBS in Lithuania at the moment are still Lithuanians. Should we start hiring STEM talent from elsewhere as they don't need to be in the office anymore? And do you think this is a good idea?
Wow. Volunteers, please.
Well, very short, not the best timing to move outside of the country because of the borders. And my personal take is you don't need to make the things more complex unless you really need to. I'm sorry for like an edgy response, but
I think it has to be something that you need to have a problem in order to actually start solving it by the tools like that. And as long as you don't have that problem, I don't really think that you need to do it.
Sarunas, what's your view?
If I could
we have the people?
Exactly. Well, we have lots of international people in Vilnius office, but if I concur on what my colleagues just said, Giedrius and Marius, I would agree with both of them. I would say I would rather go with virtual workforce, robotics and other capabilities, who might benefit short-term and long-term in a much greater scale.
Okay, and Leifs, I know you're impatiently waiting for me to close this down, but I mean, as the lady amongst the panelists, in addition to Laura, what's your view? Do we have the people?
Well, I think that we, of course, need more talent in Lithuania, and I would see it rather that I think now during this crisis, from multiple angles, we can say that Lithuania has showcased itself really well. So hopefully Vilnius can, and I am from Vilnius, so pardon my sort of, really patriotic focus on the capital city, but I think, we have good, prospects to become even a more attractive hub for people to come over. And I think that this is as relevant as it was before the outbreak.
Okay, then thanks for these final words. Giedrius, Šarūnas, Marius, you've been a wonderful panel to interact with. We didn't have all the time in the world because indeed Leifs is going to take that microphone away from me. Thank you all very much. Thank you people in the audience for fielding your questions. Continue to interact with these people. You can find us all on LinkedIn. And of course, let's not forget that the organizer of this is Invest Lithuania. Leifs, over to you, and thank you again for allowing me to moderate this panel. Bye.
Okay. Thank you very much, Elias. Thank you to our insightful speakers. We greatly appreciate your time. I think the discussion was amazing and very interesting. Thank you to our listeners. We hope it was interesting for you as well and useful. Well, my main takeaway from this panel discussion is that the industry players are adapting well to the current challenges, and that there are new opportunities arising, especially to those who were able to respond well to the current crisis. So best of luck to everyone. For our listeners, if you have any additional questions, feel free to contact us directly. Just scan the QR code that will appear on the screen shortly. You will be also able to find the recording of today's discussion on investlithuania.com website and on our YouTube page. Stay safe and take care.
Thank you, Leifs.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
Elias. Thanks Leifs.